Okay, so I really want to talk about Mickey 17. Yeah, me too. Hey everyone, I'm Hunter, and I am back today to discuss Mickey 17. I am here with my big ol' pros and cons list, and we are going to dissect this movie. You can read my whole review of this on my letterbox, which will be in the description down below. But for now, let's jump right back into this. My birthday is actually on Tuesday, March 11th, and I have a notoriously horrible birthday curse that has been my whole life. I've had about 18 out of 22 horrible birthdays, and yes, I am counting this year already because the week after my birthday, I'm having my wisdom teeth removed, so it's going in the lose column no matter what. But I did see this for my birthday this year, and so yeah, we saw it opening night, and I was thinking about whether I was going to make a movie review for this before we went in, and as we were walking out, I immediately was like, we're throwing something together because I loved this film. So I spent the last 3 months watching all of the Oscars movies, primarily in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So the Oscars were last week, to be clear. And I watched so many films. I think I watched about 18 of the pictures and all of the best pictures. And I came out of this movie with the first thought in my mind being that was better than pretty much every single film I just watched from the last Oscar season. I think this is a strong contender for next year's Oscars, and we're going to dive into all the reasons why I have these opinions right now. Now, if you've been here before, you know I kind of read off these notes just a little bit to keep myself on track, so let's get right on into it. All right, my first pro I wrote down just starts with the word vibes, so we're going to go on that. We're going to go on vibes. This movie was just everything I wanted out of a movie right now. I sincerely hope this movie gets its accolades in the next year. Walking out of that theater, one of the first sentences crossing my mind was that movie was stupid in all of the correct ways, which if you're big into this type of movie, you'll know is kind of hard to walk that line sometimes of being like so far out of reality that it's cringe in this like almost unwatchable way. This movie had that line of thinly veiled comedy that just worked so perfect in the tone that it was set in. There'll be some very minor spoilers in this, but they're just kind of like spoilers up until the 40-minute mark. After that, I won't touch the ending or anything. It's witty, it is well filmed, it's aesthetic as hell to look at, it's a really pretty film, and it is above all else a great movie theater experience. This is a film that I would put in the category of being probably 3 times better to see in a movie theater. I really recommend going to see this in all of its big screen glory. There is something that so immediately stands out in this film, and not only is that the amazing directing that this film does have. Bong Joon-ho, phenomenal work across the board, like nothing bad to say about it in that regard, almost at all. But no, the true thing that I went to the film in the first place for was that it was another Pattinson film. And that is why I went in, and sometimes that's a hit or miss reason to go see a movie with little knowledge. I went into this film without seeing the trailers. I watched 30 seconds of the 2-minute trailer and that was it. I didn't want to know anything else. I love going into blind films. I haven't done one in a while. And Pattinson delivers in this film so hard. He is well known for throwing his whole soul into his characters. He really lives and embodies them, and from the minute this movie starts, you are so wrapped up into his character. You can feel everything about him within 5 minutes of him acting in that role. You can tell that he has done that research and that he is living in this role, and he's so dedicated to bringing all his roles to life. If you watch any Pattinson interviews or read anything from him, he does like extensive character work, and of like any of the major actors I'm thinking of in my head right now, he's really like at the top of that character work pack. I think he does such a phenomenal job in all of his roles. He embodies them so fully. Mark Ruffalo is of course also in this film doing what Mark Ruffalo does best, which is appear in major blockbusters and deliver a pretty great performance. That's kind of all I really have to say about his character. He is clearly he's a commentation on the current state of American politics, and he's very Trump-coded, which makes the whole movie, oh boy, very topical, especially because I think I read that this film was mostly written after Trump had lost the last election, and now we're in this current state of the world, so it's topical in this way that a lot of major films feel topical in the last year or so. Which that, I'm going to jump points down a little bit, because that in the same way, but in a completely different sphere, completely different. You got to shift your brains with me, everyone. There's this weird, like, end of Act 1 polycule energy happening, and while it was happening in my head, all that I was repeating over and over again is, why is this like the year or the couple, like 5 years of the like what's happening in Hollywood to put this at the forefront of our media. I think it's funny. Like there's this weird scene, like I said, at the end of like Act 1 that's so Challengers coded. I was like, and then the last big name of this film is, of course, Stephen Ewan is in this film. And I think of the big names in the film, he probably has the weakest of the three. He didn't do anything outstanding, but it was fun seeing him back as kind of like a B-plot side villain, almost. For the plot or an antagonist, I would say more so. But his storyline is kind of running next to, but mostly disconnected from the main plot. Yeah, I did want to see more from his character specifically. Well, this film is not lacking in the acting department. In such a short period of time, like the world building to movie ratio is actually quite slim in this movie when you compare it to something like Avatar, which is it's similar in a lot of ways. It's similar in a lot of ways now that I'm saying out loud, of that dystopian future, going to a different planet, finding specimens, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot less world building in this, and yet the way they do it and the way they integrate it into the characters and the story makes it so much more seamless, and I love Avatar. Topic of genres, this movie just had something I love so deeply, just mixed together in this great way. It's truly a dystopian future, space, sci-fi, rom-com adventure thriller. Like, it's this beautiful mix of these like chaos genres all like woven together and like thrown into a pot, and really just the plot and writing itself in this movie is solid and sound. And then I went on to say that the world in this film and the way it's able to be built up in such a short, succinct period of time, it keeps focused on the characters. That this story stays not entirely, obviously, especially if you've seen the film, but majorly focused on like one space. Like, obviously there's a ton of rooms in this spaceship. It's where they lived for 4.5 years. But a lot of this film is interior and kept within 3 or 4 rooms. So you don't get that feeling of when stage plays are turned into scripts, where it feels very condensed. It feels very natural. Which, the film I always think of when I'm talking about this is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. That movie, you can just tell it's a screenplay. So bad. That film is just ripped straight from the theater. I do have some things, out of respect for my film degree, that I have to put in the cons category. So I'll be talking about those now. So I'm going to get the biggest and most technical filmy one out of the way right up front, and I'm just going to read it straight from here. There is a small but not overlookable amount of lost and unimportant character threads from the first act of this film. There are side characters from the first act and small threads that just kind of disappear into the mid-arc and especially into the finale of this film. They go unresolved and they make you wonder if scenes got cut or if lines got changed. I'm forgetting her name in the film, but the character who, minor spoiler, is basically trying to steal Mickey, she has this like big build-up in like the end of the first act, and then she basically vanishes from the plot until the like very, very ending. And there's this brief like half a scene, it's literally only like 30 seconds, maybe a minute and a half, where they do try to tie up some of these loose threads, but it doesn't feel like it was meant to be that way. Her and just the president's wife, she's the only other character that I didn't love. She has this like ongoing like jokey role of, you know, being the evil cult leader's wife, but also she's obsessed with sauce, and I thought that was good and like incorporated well, but the way she did her line delivery especially, I wasn't overly fond of. She felt more comedic and out of place in the world than everyone else. And luckily she's not a massive character, but she is in the film enough that I felt a little bit like, your portrayal of your character feels a little different than everyone else's. And are the biggest actual like technical flaw I would give the film in total. But when I say these things and use big scary words, but it didn't take away from my overall enjoyment of the film almost at all. It just made me, by the end of the third act, be like, are we not doing that? Okay, we're not doing that. Okay, we're moving on now. The CGI in this film actually is quite great. I have almost no complaints about it. There is obviously the creeper in the room of the little mythical creature that they introduce in this film, and I think throughout the whole film he's handled quite nicely, actually. I like him a lot. There's a couple of scenes at the very end where they're running through the outside of the ship on Niflheim. It's a Norse word, I know from my brain, but I'm forgetting the pronunciation right now, but when they're running, it's specifically Robert, he's running and he gets tripped 2 times, and I think Nasha also gets tripped, and if you like really are looking for it, you can tell the context kind of weird because they're tripping over fake objects, but that was really the only part there that I saw that kind of fell off. All of the ice scenes and the interactions with the creatures, like the more personable interactions, great. I had no complaints there. And lastly, we're going to talk about the one thing that is the nearest and dearest to my heart that I am putting in the complaint column. And this might not even pass anyone else's mind, and if it doesn't affect you, don't let it affect you. It's just something I have personal beef with that I'm going to dedicate like 2 minutes to ranting about. Like I said, I watched 20 to 30 seconds of the trailer for this. I didn't even watch a full trailer. I wanted to go in blind. The last time I went in like full blind was Poor Things, which took me out a little bit too hard. I enjoyed Poor Things, but the person I went with did not. You can imagine how that went. So I was doing a bit of a pre-screening for that because I was going with that same person again. The thing I told her walking into it was, this movie looks really good, but he's got a bit of a silly accent. And I can't place it, but it's a really silly accent. And I'm hoping, this was all walking into, or on the car ride to the theater, you know? I was telling her, I think this movie's going to be solid based on the trailer. It looks really good. I'm really excited to see Pattinson. But his accent is so goofy that I think it's going to take me out of it a little bit, and it's going to have some adjustment period for it not to seem caricature-y. That one was good enough. Actually, the opening scene of the film is Mickey, 17, doing an internal monologue out loud for the camera, so a VO essentially. And within seconds, I see Adrienne beside me do this, just full body tense, doing her cute little, and I just hear her go, "It is so silly." Anyway, we like finished the whole film. We get to the car and we're discussing how we both really liked it. And we're driving back, and I had some work to do at home that she was helping me, actually doing some VO for some work at my job. But we did evolve to it towards the second act of the film, and then it was better, especially once, minor spoilers, once Mickey 18 is introduced and you have more of that main character focus split amongst the characters, and then you have Nasha, and then the president and his wife, or not president, senator, whatever he is, Mark's character. Once you have more voices interacting and you're not so focused on him, then he felt more like a character that you could live with than having to just listen to him for hours. This is so wordy. This is just my internal ADHD needing an outlet. Anyways, we talked about it, we did my work, and then she left because it was 1 a.m. So I went to bed, woke up, and it was still in my mind. I knew I wanted to make this video today, so I was researching, and I was trying to figure it out, and I kept Googling, and I kept getting the stupid Google AI thing popping up, and I was like, he didn't have an accent thing. This is just a weird, goofy, fun little voice he made, which I was so ready to accept that. I thought it was funny, I thought it was quirky, and I was good to leave it at that. But then I see that he says in an interview that he was copying subconsciously a voice from Fargo. Oh, and my heart broke. When I tell you, my heart shattered in that moment. So I have had this beef as a supernatural child growing up on it, where I, from a young age, have had this deep personal grief with the way Hollywood and big media portrays the Minnesota accent. If you don't know, I grew up in the border, like 20 minutes on each side of Wisconsin and Minnesota. I lived in the Wisconsin Northwoods. I go to college on the border of the 2 states. Like, I am the pinnacle child for this area. When I tell you, in my entire life, I have never met a single soul with that accent. I know they exist. I know they do in these like very small, isolated pockets. That accent is supposedly, because I still have never heard it, more prevalent. When I was in Scotland, we were partnered with a couple of colleges who were there, and there was one kid on that trip who was from Minnesota, and he had a little bit of that like underlying tone that the media portrays, and I got it, and I've looked it up online, obviously, and like I said, that tone exists. But it is less than 1% of the Midwest population, and you were from, like, Europe, hearing me talk for the first time. You wouldn't assume that's how I grew up. Yeah, I would say I have a pretty damn standard American accent. Everyone in California, when I was there last year for 3 months working, did not believe me that I was from this area, because they have been brainwashed by the media. That felt really horrible saying. Alright, and then the last thing I have, my final real bullet point on here, was that the main female lead, Naomi Ackles, aka Nasha, she felt of all of the main cast like she had been the least honed in. I don't know if that's the actress's fault or the writing team's fault, but I just felt she was a little bit off story projection wise from everyone else. She still is great. Phenomenal acting itself. I liked her plot, and her plot line overall was harder to grasp or get a solid understanding of her moral character and what she was after in those scenes. If you've taken acting classes or you've worked in film at all, even in a college standpoint, you're always working towards something in each scene, and from scene to scene, she felt a little bit disjointed in what her objectives were, and that comes with her being kind of just this silly, slightly morally gray character, but yeah, it is something I was thinking about while writing out my review, like in text. On an enjoyment scale, this movie's getting a 10 out of 10 for me, which I haven't given in a while, because like I said, I've been deep in the Oscar hole, which means I have been deeply analyzing on a film, like, critique scale, and not really an enjoyment scale. And coming out of this film, having the Oscar season just ended, I had so much fun. I really enjoyed this film thoroughly. And as I said before, I will have a second rating coming now, which if I could give it, I would give it like an 8.5 out of 10 on the technical scale. Still so solid. I would probably give that a rounded up 9 still. I could totally see the argument for an 8. But I can't fault a lot of this film. It just is like such a feel-good, low-stress movie to take from it. It has its like brief moments of like think PC, like thinking of the ethics of cloning is obviously a theme throughout it, but even that's handled in like a very upright, goofy way, whereas if you think of something like Oppenheimer, that's a think piece film. This movie, not a think piece. This movie is a sit down and enjoy the ride. Things I would compare it to in genre or styling, if you haven't seen it yet and you're looking to go see it after watching reviews, it does have the world-building atmosphere of Avatar or even Dune, but you can't compare it to those. That's the vibe, the general vibe. It's not the story though. Yeah, so that's my review of Mickey 17, without even talking that much about Mickey, who is a phenomenal character, who Robert Pattinson, I can't stress enough, kills in this film. I can see him getting a leading male actor nomination for this next year. I really hope he does, or at least something in this film. All right, I think that's all I got to say. I said a lot of words, and I'm hoping to keep this under 18 minutes this time. Maybe? I don't know. Anyways, I think I'm gonna go be seeing the new Jack Quaid movie this Thursday, Novocaine. I looked, and it looks like it's not staying in theaters long where I live. Possibly only one day. Hopefully more than that, but I don't know. I didn't want to spend more money right now because I'm so broke after the surgery. Yay, American healthcare. But I seen that it might only be one day, so I might have to go. So I will maybe review that if it's really good or really bad. We'll see. Alright, thank you for watching. Please leave me your comments down below. I love getting the comments specifically on these movie review videos because I want to know what you guys thought. Alright, follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter, and subscribe here. Have a lovely day, everyone.